So I'm going to bring this meeting to order. A little bit of a wake-up call for you, Counselor. Sorry about that. First time back. So welcome, everybody. A little bit things are going to be a little bit different tonight. Some of us here are able to live stream right from the council chambers ourselves. And so I'm going to start with some introductions here. On my far right, we have Councillor Braderick, first time in the chambers here. On to my not so far right is Councillor Cheryl Ganan. Right to my left here, immediate left, is Councillor Trombetta. And to my far left is Councillor Rayner. Joining us in the chambers there, in the virtual chambers that is, we have Mayor Bilsma and Councillor Harold Yonker, and then we have our staff, of course. And yeah, so this is a little slice of normal coming back one step at a time, so we're excited to be here, and we're excited even for the opportunity to be able to do this back where we started doing this in. So just moving things forward, I'm going to start by explaining that due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19, and to protect all individuals, the council chambers will not be open to the public to attend a standing committee and council meeting until further notice. The public may submit comments for matters that are on the agenda to J. Dyson at westlincoln.ca before 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be considered as public information and will be read into the public record. As well as a reminder, the meeting will be live streamed, if you haven't already tuned in, live streaming and is recorded, and will be available on the township website. Moving to our land acknowledgement statement, on behalf of members of this council and staff, we wish to acknowledge this land on which the Township of West Lincoln operates. The land on which we gather is a traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples and is still home to many indigenous peoples today. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work here today and to follow the Haudenosaunee and system of blending laws and values and the Anishinaabe beliefs to strive to live in harmony and balance throughout the municipality. We acknowledge that we are all treaty people and accept our responsibility to honor all our relations. So I'm going to move to closure of this pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest. Do I see any? Councillor Braderick?
Yes, sir. I have a conflict of interest on one of the items on our agenda tonight. I'm just pulling that up, and that is 10.1. That item under staff reports.
Okay, so item P10921. Okay, so we'll have that noted for the clerk, so when that time comes, you'll not participate or vote on that. All right, any other conflicts of interest? Not seeing or hearing any. Bring my screen back up here. So we got a public meeting tonight. I'm going to jump right into the public meeting. Let me just bring up the other window. All right, so I guess I'll explain first that the public meeting under 4.1, street naming public meetings, 167 St. Catherine Street, and the public meetings to consider the street naming for up to 2 private streets within a condominium located at 167 St. Catherine Street in Smithville.
So through the chair, I can present this report. Request to name a private street within the 167 St. Catherine Street draft plan approved condominium has been submitted by the owner. The draft plan approved condominium is located west of the Union Cemetery and directly across the street from the Legion. The condominium has one main private street to provide access to the majority of the units, with one small branch to access 3 of the townhouse units fronting St. Catherine Street. The applicant has proposed 2 street names that come from the township's approved list of street names. These names are Angle Street and Bowman Street. Planning staff are unsure as to whether the 2 street names are required and have circulated the application right now to the Township Fire Department for their comments. The region of Niagara has also reviewed the street names in relationship to 911 PERS compliance and have no objections. Planning staff recommend that once it is determined how many street names are required, staff prepare and present a recommendation report to the committee and council. I would like to also add that one public comment has come in suggesting 2 street names being Creamery Row or Waddell Street.
Okay, thank you. Now, we kind of got a little ahead of ourselves here. I just want to go back a couple of steps here. I appreciate you kind of jumping in and explaining the purpose of this, but just so the general public's aware that the public meeting is being held in accordance with Municipal Act SO 2001, Chapter 25, and the Township of West Lincoln Procedural Bylaw and Street Naming Policy being Policy POL PD 0111 for the street naming for the location of 167 St. Catherine Street. As well, the Township West Lincoln Procedural Bylaw states that any matter pertaining to the naming of a highway or public road in a plan division or subdivision, or the plan of a condominium, sorry, kind of wording here, for which the notice is required to be given. Notice shall be published at least once, and the date of the publication being at least 7 days prior to the council meeting indicated in the notice. So I'm just going to, again, we're just going to do this so we're consistent. I'm going to go to the clerk and just have her advise what methods and dates by which the notice of this public meeting was given.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proper notice was circulated to applicable agencies and advertised on the township's website on October 25th, 2021, as well as advertised in local newspapers on October 28th, 2021.
Thank you. And so we already had the explanation from our planner one, Megan Burbick. So I'm going to ask if there's any applicants or agents available in the virtual gallery here that would like to speak to this. This is your chance to speak to this. I'm not seeing or hearing any, so we're going to move things along to public submissions. Are there any oral written submissions from anyone present on the Zoom meeting regarding the street naming consideration? And I will note, if any members of the public that are in attendance at the Zoom public meeting would like to make comments and or provide written comments, they should do so now by using one of the two options. Option one, if you're using a computer or smartphone, you're going to just select the raise your hand feature. If you have option two and you're called in on through a landline, you're going to dial *9, and this will notify staff that you've raised your hand. Once you've been acknowledged, please unmute your microphone, and once you finish, please mute your microphone again. And we do ask that you please state your name and address for the record. And I'm still not seeing anybody, so we're going to move to members of committee. Okay, and so at this time, do any members of committee have any oral written submissions regarding this street naming consideration? Any member of committee wishing to speak are required to unmute their microphone to talk, and once they are finished, they should mute their microphone again. So members of committee, I got Councilor Broderick.
Yes, through you, Chair, to the Director of Planning. I just had a question in regards to our policy on street naming. I see that in the report that Megan spoke about, that there was approved names of the township, but I was curious if the township has a street naming policy, and I understand the importance with the 911 being of utmost importance and consideration, but just wondering if we have a policy that we follow to guide us on appropriate names.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. Yes, we do have a policy. It was reviewed and presented to Planning Committee by our Heritage Committee several years ago, and I think perhaps during the last term of council it was reviewed and updated or refined just a little bit. I'm suspecting though that this term of council maybe has not seen that policy, so I can have that circulated out to all of council tomorrow, just so that you have the actual policy with you. What the policy in a nutshell does is basically guides that a minimum of 50% of all street names in a proposed development should come from the prepared list of names, and the prepared list of names attached to the policy generally reflect historical surnames in the township, including those individuals who went off to war, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, whether they came back or not. So that in a nutshell is the nature of the policy. It hasn't been revisited this term of council, as I recall, but it does help guide staff in our presentation of reports back to committee.
Thank you, Director. I don't have any further questions, and I'll watch for that policy to come through on our email. Thank you.
Excellent. I think I saw Councilor Yonker's hand up there. Councilor, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, I think we have seen it through the Heritage Committee, the list of names before as in this term, but yeah, the other Councillor Bat, I've seen that, right? So, but yeah, I remember seeing a list, and yeah, just wanted to remind that I believe we've seen it. So,
I believe, yeah, I think what you're speaking of is something that we had, we might have seen, or maybe within our first 3 or 4 months in. I think we had a street naming process at that time as well. There was a name that was under consideration, so I think that was shared with us briefly, but that would have been just before Councillor Bradovic was on our council there. So, thank you, Councillor. Any other members of committee here? Not seeing or hearing any. Please be advised that a technical report is being considered by the Planning Committee this evening, and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future Planning Committee and/or Council meeting. Everyone is invited to stay in attendance here to listen to committee's comments and/or recommendation with respect to the street naming for the location at 167 St. Catherine Street, which will take place shortly following the conclusion of this public meeting. Those who wish to be advised of any subsequent meetings and/or decisions on the matter may email the Township Clerk, Joanne Shimei, at jshimei@westlincoln.ca. The public meeting with respect to the street naming for the location 167 St. Catherine Street is concluded at the hour of, we'll say, 6:41 p.m. Those ones are off by a minute. All right, so we're going to move back over. We got 2 clocks in the room here, and they're about a minute apart, so. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move to, well, I kind of jumped things here. So for the record, I think I should just note that today is Tuesday, November 9th. It's 2021, and this is meeting number 9 of the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting. Kind of got things a little out of whack there. Anyways, all right, so anybody have any orders or any items they wish to change the order of? Not seeing or hearing any. We have no appointments tonight. We have requests to address items on the agenda. Last I looked, I don't think we had anybody in the virtual attendance. Not at least, we have one individual. I'll read it just in case they want to address something. So just requesting to address any items on the agenda, and we'll wait and see, and then I can always read that. So the person who's joined us, if you'd like to speak, raise your hands now. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward to consent agenda items. Not seeing or hearing anything. So we have a consent agenda items. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial and can be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following the adoption of the remaining agenda items. So we have under item P10821, the recommendation that the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting hereby approves the following consent agenda items. 1, item 1B, and is hereby received for information. Item 2B, and is hereby received, and that the recommendations contained therein be adopted with the exception of item number, and there's currently none. And item 1 is a technical report number PD-120-2021, 167 St. Catherine Street, condominium street naming. And 2, recommendation report PD-118-2021, authorizing bylaw, agent Ontario Outbuilding, owner Bert Viss of history, 214 St. Catherine Street, file number 2100-01221. So if I can get somebody to move that, I have Mayor Bylsma, I have Councillor Gannan as the seconder. Before I call the question, any items to be pulled? Not seeing or hearing anything. All those in favor? All right, any opposed? All right, that carries. I'll confirm that. Harold, were you opposing or is your internet delayed? Okay, so I'll consider that.
I was not imposing. Yeah, my internet is a little slow.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'll try to take that in consideration tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's passed. We're getting no communication, so now we're on to staff reports. Planner 2, Madison Etzel, and Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble. Information report, PD 122-2021, zoning bylaw amendment 7005, Concession Road 4, JCT Services, Joe DeLuio, owner Eldon Darbyson, agent. And the recommendation is that Report 122-2021 regarding the updated information report, zoning bylaw amendment, 7005 Concession 4 Road, JCT Services, dated November 9, 2021 be received, and that recommendation report be submitted to a future planning, building, environmental committee and council meeting once a full staff and agency review has been completed and a full understanding of the applicant proposal is achieved. I will note for the record that this is the item Councillor Broderick had disclosed a conflict of interest, so she'll not be participating in this. And so I'm going to need a mover. I have Councillor Trombetta, seconder, Councillor Yonker. Any questions, comments? I have Councillor Gannan and Councillor Rayner. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really happy to see that we have received some updated information. Sometimes between a recommendation report and then a report that comes forward recommending something apart from the technical, we don't see anything in between. And we had a lot of questions about this when it came before us, and I'm glad to see that some of those questions are still being asked. When I think about this, I think about it being twofold, and I hope that staff are still looking at it in a twofold way. One, we have a business that was operating without permission first, so to speak. It was operating in an unauthorized way, and we're trying to bring that business into compliance. So that's one thing. So I see that very separate from the fact that this business also wants to expand, and I'm very concerned about the placement of the proposed buildings, and I'm happy, actually, that our staff is still questioning that as well. So I think my recommendation to staff is just continue to ask those hard questions, please, on behalf of the other residents who live around there. I'm not sure, because of the mapping in the report, just where the owner of the property actually lives and whether that building is going to be close to his own home or whether it's going to be close to the neighboring property. And I have a concern either way with that. And I'm also anxious to see what Public Works has to say about the use of Concession 4 Road. I don't believe that it was built for taking the number of trucks that are meant to go up and down it if this business grows, and I'm not sure about how long it will last under the circumstances. So I think there's still a lot more to learn before we're ready to move on this file. But I do appreciate having this interim report. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Council. Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Gannan pretty well covered everything. There's a number of concerns that I also expressed last month. And like Councillor Gannan, I trust and I feel comfortable that the Planning Department will be on top of this and get all those questions that we had last month answered and concerns that they also had. And especially with regards to the wear and tear of our roads out there. That was a big thing. We've spent a lot of money 15, 20 years ago tar and chipping a lot of roads out there, and to have these heavy trucks on them and potentially damaging what we've started to enjoy is certainly going in the wrong direction, and I'm sure planning will deal with that appropriately. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. Any other members of committee? I see. I'll go to the director, Brian Treble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to belabor anything, but I just, in response to a statement made by Councillor Gannan, I just wanted to see if I could be successful in pointing out on attachment 1 to the report, which would be page 22 of 62 in the agenda. You'll see the proposed concept and includes the proposed future building. That location is what the applicant is proposing as part of the original application. And if you move to the right of that or east of that, you'll see a topographic circle, a smaller circle over towards the edge of the property, and it's got 189 on it. Immediately below that 189 is the sort of the shaded outline of the house on the property in question. So you'll see that the proposed future building is quite a long ways from the owner's house and considerably closer to the neighbor's house based on the proposal as presented. And staff are of the opinion that it really should be the other way around. The proposed business should be close to his own house, in fact, probably part of a cluster of buildings that includes the house on his own property, and not a cluster of his neighbors' buildings. So that's part of the more detailed discussion we are having right now, Mr. Chair.
That's excellent. I fully agree with that. Councillor?
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, again, thank you, Mr. Treble, for that. I actually had a difficult time with this map, and that's why I raised that point. Because it is mainly showing the property and how that proposed expansion can fit on the property, it doesn't really, and I didn't have any way to put that in conjunction with what the rest of the land and where the neighboring houses were. So I went actually to the internet and sort of looked up that map and tried to figure out the properties from there. So I do appreciate that, Mr. Treble. Thank you.
Any other members of committee have any questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that passes. All right, moving on to item 10.2. So we have item P11021, Planner 2, Madison Etzel, and Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, and it's a recommendation report for PD 123-2021, a zoning bylaw amendment, site plan authorizing bylaw post-time services. And so the recommendation is that report PD 123-2021 regarding the zoning bylaw amendment, site plan authorizing bylaw post-time services, Kevin Van Weer, dated November 9th, 2021, be received, and that section 3417 of the Planning Act apply, that no further public meeting is required, and 3, that an application for zoning bylaw amendment 1601-011-21 submitted by post-time services and a corresponding zoning bylaw be approved and passed, and that staff be authorized to circulate the notice of decision for the zoning bylaw amendment with the corresponding 20-day appeal period. And finally, that an authorizing bylaw be passed to permit the mayor and clerk to sign the amending site plan agreement completed to the satisfaction of staff. So I'm going to need a mover for that. I have Councillor Ganane. I have then Councillor Trombetta. Any comments or question? Not seeing or hearing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? All right, that passes, or that carries, I guess I should say. So we're moving to item 10.3, which is also item P11121, Enforcement Officer Tiana Dominic, and Planning and Building Planning and Building Brian Treble. And the recommendation report is under PD 126-2021, Snow Event Weather Advisory Focus Winter Parking Enforcement to accommodate the procedural review of parking, driveway, boulevard, and culvert bylaws. And within the recommendation is report PD 126-2021 regarding snow event weather advisory focused winter parking by enforcement to accommodate the procedural review of parking, driveway, boulevard, and culvert bylaws dated November 9th, 2021 be received. And that enforcement staff proceed with a parking enforcement focus 24 hours before and after a snowfall event weather advisory with an increased set fine to accommodate the ongoing procedural review of the parking, driveway, boulevard, and culvert bylaws. And that enforcement staff provide feedback to council at a later date and time in regards to the procedural review and snow event weather advisory focused parking lot enforcement. So I need a mover. I have Councillor Bradrick. Can I get a seconder? I have Mayor Bilsma. Any comments or questions? I have Councillor Trombetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Treble. In the past, we've never had a really feedback come to council in this procedural review. Why this time around?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the bylaw enforcement approach with respect to parking has been ongoing now for many terms of council, so we haven't had an update on enforcement strategy. The last time that we had a discussion, I recall some of the councillors who are no longer sitting at the table having concerns around the signage and the type of enforcement, and it was discussed at that point that they wanted random, sporadic winter enforcement. But they wanted the signage to be in place all year long. So since we've had those discussions many councils ago and nothing in the interim, before we changed our strategy, I wanted council to be aware of our change in approach. We're getting so many requests for on-street parking and the need for on-street parking, and it really isn't a problem except in the time of snow events. So we're proposing that we make this change and test it out to see if it works any better.
Thank you for that. And through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Treble, are there more than, obviously probably in the urban area, there's more sensitive areas. Is there one particular sensitive area that's always coming up?
Through you, Mr. Chair, inside Smithville, we have a number of sensitive areas. Golden Acres Drive and Swayze Court are two that come immediately to mind where there's always parking challenges in the winter.
Okay. Okay, good to be noted. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trouble. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other, Councillor Ganan?
Just to you, Mr. Tribble, through you, Chair. I'm wondering how we're going to make sure that people are aware of this change. I'm sure that you've already talked about that, but would you share with us any things that you've talked about, please, so that we know how to help get this word out?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, staff have had some discussions about that, and subject to council's endorsement, our bylaw officer will start first by putting notices or warnings on vehicles and giving them a heads up. She'll come in 2 or 3 random days just to travel around town during the 2 to 6 hour in the morning and put notices out so that we get word out that way. We have found historically in previous winters, a lot of the people receiving tickets are repeat offenders. So if we do 2 or 3 sporadic morning trips or tours around town, we should probably capture a nice chunk of them. In addition to that, through you, Mr. Chair, we are going to have notice on the web as well as on the sign out front of the building and things of that nature. So yeah, we will try to get notice out as best we can, and certainly on windshields probably will be most effective.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent, thank you. And also thank you for the explanation. Hopefully we can also utilize social media, and that's always a good way to kind of help get the conversation started too, so. Yeah, and so not seeing any other, I'll look at the virtual chambers, not seeing any other questions or comments by anyone. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that carries. So we're going to move to 10-4. Make sure I'm not, yep. Okay, so under item P11221, make sure my mic's on. Planner 2, Garrett Borma, and Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble. The recommendation report, PD 119-2021, Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2017-70, as amended, housekeeping amendment number 6. And the recommendation is that report, PD 119-2021, regarding housekeeping amendments number 6 to the zoning bylaw 2017-70 as amended, dated November 9th, 2021, be received, and that proper notice be given and a public meeting be held as required by the Planning Act at a future Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting. So I need somebody to move that for me. I've Councillor Braderick and Councillor Ganan as my seconder. Any comments or questions? Director, I see you popped on. Did you want to make any comment here?
If I may, Mr. Chair, and again, I don't mean to belabor things, but I thought I would point out that a few months ago we had discussions around possibly looking at what could be done to attempt to address the natural severance situation, such as it was that we were dealing with over the last few months earlier this year. And with Mr. Richardson, our legal counsel's guidance and actually input from a lawyer at the province, we've identified a couple of changes or additions to the definition of lot in our zoning bylaw that would assist us in making it clear about the status of natural severances and how we would recognize them in our bylaw. So that, Mr. Chair, is one of the proposed changes in this list, is attempting to address the natural severance process. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that this is a follow-up to an action item I had committed to looking into a while ago.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Not seeing or hearing any. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. Sorry, I'm just waiting to see if, yeah, I see the delay there. All right. That carries. So moving forward to 10.5, item P11321, Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, recommendation report, PD 124-2021, authority to sign an amending site plan agreement with West Niagara Agricultural Society, and the recommendation is that item, PD 124-2021, regarding the recommendation report, authority to sign an amending site plan agreement, with West Niagara Agricultural Society, dated November 9th, 2021, be received. And that a bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an amending site plan agreement once completed to staff's satisfaction. So if I can get somebody to move that for me, please. I have Mayor Bylsma and Councillor Ganan as my seconder. And any questions or comments? I have Mayor Bylsma.
And thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I'm looking at the map on this, the site plan that's there, and there's a proposed 1,040 square meter building in the neighborhood of the existing 1,400. And they look like the same size rectangles. And then there's a proposed 126 square foot meter, and maybe it's just a kind of a rough sketch or something like that, but it looks like it's about the same size as an existing 426 square meter. 126 square meters, something like 20 by 30 feet, 20 feet by 30 feet. So it's relatively, is that just kind of a vague area that we're approving, and they can float around that rectangle, or is that maybe to the director, maybe provide some clarity why that square looks a lot bigger than 126 square meters?
Okay, yeah, Director, would you mind speaking to that?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question again. The mayor has generally hit the nail on the head. The boxes, or the rectangles, if I can call them that, are generally concepts, and somewhere within that concept is where the building will go. And I think I had indicated in the report, there's actually 2 building permit proposals pending. One of them is one of the buildings identified as, well, it's actually the one labeled on the sketch attached as proposed 1040 square meter building. That building will be receiving its building permit if it hasn't already, since it was on the original approved site plan. The one labeled proposed 126 square meter building will be the one that we have to redline, if I can call it that, into the site plan, since it really doesn't exist right now. That's been hand marked on by staff. And so through you, Mr. Chair, the boxes are not meant to be a perfect depiction of the size, but more a concept of the area, so that staff are aware of what's proposed should we look at the file again down the road.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. No further, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other members of the committee have any questions or comments for the director? Oh, Councillor Yonker.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, to the direct planning. In there it says staff proposed to add the second tie stall barn by another amendment, and then a second amendment that occurred in 2018 was proposed with the site plan fee being waived by council. So that's just, if you can, that's just the other we've already gotten approval for, and you just mentioned the permit for. That's not saying we're waiving the site plan fee for the new one. If you can explain that, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Just the history on this is a little bit interesting, and some of you will be aware that the original site plan on this property went actually through a process of having to have the Ontario Municipal Board's approval due to concerns of neighbors in the area. Then subsequent to the board supporting actually a settlement that we achieved, in 2016, the first of the tie stall buildings was constructed. That was what we called a red line revision at that time. In 2018, they added the tractor pull area and all of that additional material over to the west on the agricultural land. That was done through an application for site plan approval, and at that time, the Agricultural Society came forward with a request to waive the fee. There is no similar request at this time on this application. So as proposed right now, the site plan will be reviewed and approved once a fee is received.
Excellent, thank you. I assume that answers your question there, Councillor. Are you happy with that? Perfect. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, I'm going to confirm. Councilor Yonker, I know you said you had a delayed signal there. Was that for or opposed?
4.
Okay, thank you. So we just have the one noted that was opposed. So, all right, thank you, Councilor. Okay, we're going to move forward to 10.6, and it's item P11421, Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, Recommendation Report PD 125-2021, authorizing bylaw to remove an existing site plan from title of Part Lot 16, Concession 8, owned by the Davis family to allow conveyance of a road allowance to the region. And the recommendation report is that PD 125-2021 regarding the recommendation report authorizing bylaw to remove a site plan from the title of Part Lot 16, Concession 8, owned by the Davis family to allow conveyance of a road allowance to the region dated November 9th, 2021 be received. And that a bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign all documents necessary for the removal of the existing site plan from Part 2 of 30R15738, the regional road allowance lands for road widening purposes prior to transfer to the region of Niagara. If I can get a mover for this. Councillor Gannan and Mayor, I'm going to go with Councillor Yonker. And I'm going to call or ask if there's any questions or comments from anyone. Not seeing or hearing any, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And any opposed? All right, and that still carries. So moving along to other business, under item P11520, members of committee, are there any other matters of business for informative natures? Councillor Gannan and Mayor Belsman, you can be next.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take advantage of this opportunity to make sure that members of council and staff are aware that on Wednesday, November the 24th, the Kiwanis, in partnership with the town and with the Christian High School, are planning to have a tree lighting. We are very hopeful that all will be well. We have no plans for a backup, so we need to have good weather. We cannot move it inside this year because of the COVID restrictions, so we're just keeping fingers crossed that we will all be able to enjoy tree lighting, some Christmas music, and some speeches. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope the weather's good too.
6:30, by the way.
6:30, excellent. Mayor Belsma?
Yeah, so thank you for that also, Councillor Gannan. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that Thursday's Remembrance Day. We have our service at the Legion, and so hopefully, looks like weather's going to be good for that. Much different than the snowstorm that happened 2 years ago. So, anyways, with that, I just want to highlight that for us as well.
Excellent.
No further.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other members of the committee? Not seeing or hearing any, so we're going to move things along. Any new items of business? Not seeing or hearing any. No confidential matters tonight. So, at this point, I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned at the hour of 7:07 p.m. That's a pretty quick night, guys.
I think that's the fastest planning meeting I've ever attended.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So,
Go hybrid.
yeah, there you go. Just have a great night, everyone.
So kudos to Roberta, Ms. Keith, and Jack.
Open the sign.
They heard you. They're giving you a thumbs up.
Yeah, went good.